and welcome to Raising a Powerful Girl, the podcast. I'm your host, Maria Fuller. I'm a mom to two awesome girls, and I have a background in health science, women's studies, leadership in times of disruption, and parenting from various universities. But you can read more about me online. I've spent more than a decade working with women of all ages to help shed unhealthy beliefs and break down stereotypes surrounding pregnancy, motherhood, body image, self-esteem, parenting, women in leadership, and much more. My mission is to not only help advocate for girls, but empower them to use their voice. And I believe that one of the most powerful ways that we can empower our daughter is by modeling the behavior that we want to see. And that is what we're going to explore on this podcast as I bring on professionals, guests, and share stories from all around the world on how we can do better and empower this next generation of girls. From toddler to teen, we have you covered. If you're looking to raise a powerful girl who understands who she is at her core, has the skills she needs to navigate the physical and emotional journey of being a girl in today's world, uses her voice and stands up not only for herself but advocates for others, and understands that she has a purpose here in this world, well then you've come to the right place, because this is Raising a Powerful Girl. Thank you for pushing play today, and make sure to subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform so that you don't miss an episode. Miriam Schulman has made her living as a professional artist for over 15 years. In addition to selling paintings, she also teaches her techniques through her online site, The Inspiration Place, and is the host of a top-rated podcast of the same name. Schulman abandoned a hedge fund career after witnessing the devastation of 9/11 to work on her art full-time. Rejecting the starving artist myth, her watercolor and mixed media paintings have been seen on NBC, published in art magazines and home decor books, and collected worldwide. In addition, New York museums have carried her artistic accessories in their gift shops. She has been published in art magazines such as Art of Man, Art Journaling Magazine by Stampington, and is a regular contributor to Professional Artists Magazine. She is a host of her own podcast, The Inspiration Place, a podcast for artists to learn how to market and sell their art, and for other people who want to become artists to quiet their inner critic and reconnect with their lost creativity. On today's podcast interview, we talk about why we have to stop telling our daughters that they can't make a living doing what they want to do. Miriam's daughter is pursuing a degree in music education, and neither of them listened when naysayers said that she should pursue a liberal arts degree instead. Miriam talks about how if you have a daughter who wants to become an artist, the best thing you can do is help her develop the skills she needs to pursue that. We also talk about how the stories and criticisms we hear early in life become our limiting self-belief. Well, welcome, Miriam. I'm so excited to have you here today, and we have such a great topic to talk about. I would love for you to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Maria, for having me. It's an honor to be here. So my name, like you said, I'm Miriam Schulman, and right now I am the host of the Inspiration Place podcast, and also I'm the founder of a site called The Inspiration Place, where I teach online art classes. And that is the bulk of what I do, as well as sell my fine art online and in person.
Awesome. So have you always been an artist?
No, I haven't. So I always loved art. I mean, let me back up a minute. I feel I always have been an artist. I haven't always been a professional artist. I haven't always collected money for being an artist, but I feel I've always been an artist, even when I was even as far back as the fourth grade, when my fourth grade teacher said that I was like the class artist. That's pretty much when I put on that identity. But as far as making money as an artist, that started about 15 years ago.
So what brought you to becoming an artist, and what did you do beforehand?
So I really always wanted to be an artist, but like most people, I was told that I wouldn't be able to make a living. My mother wasn't supportive of my studying art in college. I mean, I did take a lot of art classes and studied art history, but that wasn't my major. Was engineering. I got a master's in engineering, and I used that degree to get a job on Wall Street to make money, because the message I was being given was you had to make money. So where is money? On Wall Street. So that was where I initially started off. But I was always painting, even when I was in graduate school. And even during that Wall Street job, I never stopped creating or painting on the side.
That's pretty awesome. And I have a similar story, and we'll get into that later on. But what made you make that jump then from working on Wall Street, and you probably had a successful career, to then ditching your master's of engineering and really pursuing your passion?
Yeah. So just so you know, because you kind of was not clear. I was making a lot of money on Wall Street, and I was doing really well and was very well respected in first I was in a very large firm on Wall Street, and then the main people I was working for, the traders I was working for, started a hedge fund. And that is basically, if you ever saw like The Big Short or any of those types of movies, or any of the Michael Lewis books, it's that type of world, like uber wealthy, successful people. I left to work on a hedge fund. So it wasn't until that hedge fund blew up in 1998 that I began to rethink what I was doing. And at the same time, my first child was a year old. So she was born in 97. I was still working when the hedge fund blew up in 98. And I went back to what was left of the company. They still kept it around because it was such a big firm back then that they had to keep the firm around so that it wouldn't bring down all of Wall Street with it. So I did have a job, but I was very disillusioned by that job. And I had a young baby at home, and I was beginning to feel like the only reason I was going to work was to make money. And it felt like I was just being paid to stay away from my child. And that didn't sit with me. So that's why I decided to take a break. And I didn't come to the decision to become an artist right away. It took a little while before I reached that decision.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think for so many of us that something happens when you become a parent, when you become a mom, and you have to start making this decision to go to work every day. It's so much harder when it's not something that completely fulfills you, or that you're not completely passionate about. And I think it's, and I'm not a proponent of stay-at-home mom or work mom. I'm a proponent of do what makes you happy, what makes you feel inspired, whether your time away from your child is volunteering or working. But, I think it's really important is this passion. And it's interesting that your story for you when you were younger was that you need to study something that's going to make you money. Your career needs to be something that's going to make you money. And this focus on what's going to make you money, I think, is resulting in this issue where we have so many people that are miserable doing what they love. And people don't think that they can actually have a career or make a living doing something that they love doing every single day. And that was something that I've had to navigate, and it's something that I want for my girls. I don't care what they do in their life. I just want them to do something that they feel fulfilled in and that they love doing. And I think creativity in many different facets is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And then let me just also say, there's nothing wrong with making money.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with making money from creativity, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. So my daughter, she is 21 and she's in college now, and she is pursuing a degree in music education. So she is doing something that will support her and following her passion. And I think it's the combination that's important. And what bothered me when I was working on Wall Street was not that I was making money. It was not that money is evil, but I just didn't have any other purpose other than the money. And the money became a very poor motivator for me. So I didn't feel like there was a purpose behind it other than not just that I was making money for myself, but the purpose of that job was to make money for other people. So there's nothing wrong with making money in and of itself. It's just that it has to be combined with a a purpose that you feel you can get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that whole concept of purpose, of finding your purpose is, as a person, you know, as a girl, finding your purpose, knowing what lights you up, what you want to do in the world, how you want to impact others, and then being able to find a career that supports that is really powerful. And I agree that, you know, money is never a bad thing. There's so much that we're able to do when we have that. And that's definitely a mindset that we want to help shift in women and girls, that making money and making lots of money is really, really awesome. You can help so many other people and do so many other things, but don't just do the job because it makes a lot of money. That's where burnout happens. Like you, I always loved art, and my mom always loved art, but you know, the subtle messages that I got from school, and I went to Catholic school through my first year of college, the messaging was that art was for girls, that art was girly, and that it was something you do on the side for fun, but it was never career-based. And so I didn't explore that passion as much, because I had built into my head was that you needed to find a career so that you could support yourself, so you could be an independent girl. So I had that messaging,
right.
But that creativity didn't play a role in it. And I went into medicine. And what I have learned, especially from my career in medicine and from being an entrepreneur for so many years, is that creativity is the heart of everything that we do. I was a paramedic. And so if you weren't creative, you would not succeed as a paramedic, and your patient would not live. Because, you know, you look at emergency medicine, you look at accident situations, you look at really interesting traumas and injuries. You have to be able to constantly think outside of the box, look at different scenarios, and take education or knowledge and use creativity in order to help someone. And it wasn't until later on in my life that I figured out that I actually found a creative career. And I think that's what I loved so much about it. It wasn't, you know, I love to help others, and that was important, but it was that creative thinking. Every single day was unique and different. Every single problem that was thrown at me was something unique to solve. And so to me, I think that was a very creative field. But when we think of someone in medicine, we never associate the idea of creativity as being medicine.
And then I would have to admit also that I didn't hate my job on Wall Street, because I was able to bring creativity into it, believe it or not. Like there's creative problem solving, as you say. Mm-hmm. And then what I was doing was being able to use some of my creativity to build programs for the traders that were using it. But I just still felt there was more that I could do and more people I could serve, not in that industry, by going into the arts industry.
Yeah. So talk about that journey of going into the arts and deciding, you know, I want to explore shifting this to a career and making money, and, you know, being able to do something that supports you. What did that look like for you? And what barriers did you kind of have to break down for yourself to go and pursue that?
Well, so the timing is I left my Wall Street position, 98 to, or maybe slightly after that. I'm trying to think when the timing was. I think it was like 99 when I left. And I had my second child in 2000. So I was taking a break, and I had thought that I might go back to Wall Street. Like it was just an extended maternity leave. I didn't know then if I was going to pursue art at that time. But what happened during this break, so in 2001 was 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. And I worked in one of those World Trade Center towers, not the big two main ones, but several World Trade. So when I saw that meltdown happening, and also the people who were in the second tower who didn't leave, I completely understood where that mentality came from, because in 1992, I was working in Seven World Trade when the first bomb went off. Wow. And they encouraged us to go back to our desks. So I was in that whole lifestyle of work is more important than life. So that was why when I saw that happen, I took that as, and here what I had one toddler and a baby who was a year old, and I was contemplating whether to go back to Wall Street and put on those stockings, which is what we wore back then. I know women don't wear them anymore. Put back on my hose and my high heels and go back to a job or do something else. And when 9/11 happened, it's like, you cannot ask for a bigger sign from the universe.
Yeah.
Not to go back when you watch those buildings melting down on television and those lives lost. So that was a big wake up call for me. And because I had always wanted to be an artist and I had my whole life, I was really shaken to the core by that. Then I was able to, rise from the ashes and come up with something else. But I did have the challenge of trying to maybe not replace my Wall Street job. That was not something that I thought I could do back then, but at least create to fill the gap between what I had given up and then what we needed to continue without me going back to that position. So that was my challenge, and to look for how I can create revenue streams using my art to do that.
Awesome. So what was maybe one of the first projects that you took on to do that?
Yes. So the first thing that I was able to do actually was I took my art to one of these local fairs, and I did sell several paintings during that show. So that was the first proof of concept that, yes, people like my art enough to pay for it. During that year, though, I did make a decision to start with portraits. And that was probably the best decision that I could make in terms of creating a revenue stream for myself. I was perfectly positioned as a mother of small children myself, and in that world all the time, to be able to meet people who would be also interested in getting their portraits done. I started off just painting my own children, and then my children became my advocates. So they would take when they would show their friends the portrait, and I actually did my son in his Batman costume, so he was so proud of that. And he would bring his friends in to see the portrait. And then when the parents would come pick up the kid would say, "Look at this portrait." So, and then that's how it began to snowball. These portraits all became ambassadors for me. As they went into different homes, the portraits that I did for other people's children, which I charged for, they became similar advocates for my work. And that's how my business initially grew, was through doing commissioned portraits.
That's awesome. I love that you took that idea and also your situation and where you were in life with your children and just pulling from everyday life. And obviously that's something that's so precious to so many moms, is having those memories captured, and for you able to do that was really awesome. What were some limiting beliefs? So we talk about limiting beliefs, and you probably had to break through a lot of that. The limiting beliefs that we started talking about, how you were kind of told that art wasn't going to give you the money that you needed in order to have a career. How did you work through breaking that down and making that leap?
Well, like I said, I had proof right away. When I sold that first watercolor painting for, I think it was $250. So it wasn't like I was started off like asking thousands of dollars for my art. I still don't, but the portraits also, again, it was proof of concept that early on, when I began to see that this is something people really want and need. And if somebody really wants and needs and they're willing to pay for it, you have a business. That's, that's the step one. As far as mindset, I feel like that kind of thing actually became more of an issue as my business grew, and it's still an issue. So at the beginning, it's easy to at least for me, it was easy to start off and like, okay, yeah, I can make some side money. It's growing into that bigger role of, this is not just a part-time job. This is a full-time job and a full-time income, that I had different kinds of mindset issues that came up
with that. Can you attribute that to stuff with how you were raised, or what you were thought, made to believe as you were younger? Or were they things that came up as you had, grown up, per se?
I think that a lot of it has to do, for me, has to do with, it was less like asking money for my art. I don't think I ever had a problem with that because I knew that I wasn't painting for the money, but I knew I was selling it for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew I could always make money for fun, but if I was selling it, I was going to get paid for it. So I never had a problem with that. I think what the bigger challenge for me was setting boundaries with my clients and learning how to navigate that just because you're for hire, that doesn't mean that people can tell you whatever they want or abuse you. So being able to set very firm boundaries with people, that was more of a challenge for me, learning to do that and negotiate that. Another issue, I think, was setting prices would be a different money block. That was a turning point for me. And I think I would contribute a lot of my turning around that idea would be to, do you know Denise Duffield Thomas? So she is somebody who I found very inspiring and helpful of not looking to other artists to set your prices. So I think that is a danger that people do, is they want to set their prices no matter what the industry is, what the field is you look to other people and you can't do that because they may have their own money issues and they may be undercharging. So learning to value that, and that turning point for me and it was a combination of her advice, but also I was accepting another artist onto my site to teach classes, and for some reason I had no problem setting the cost of her online class a lot higher than my own. And there was a little bit of like, wait a minute, why aren't my classes being charged that much? And when I changed that was another point for me. So it's not charging enough for my online classes and looking to other people. I found that was more also an obstacle that I had to overcome, like price setting based on other people's money blocks.
Yeah, no, I get that a lot. You know, I was a photographer for 9 years and ran a high-end studio at one point before, you know, I pivoted from that into doing the work that I'm doing now. And I did a lot of work helping other women that, you know, have careers, become moms. You know, when you become a mom, you start taking pictures of your children because you want to capture all the memories, and then, you know, it spins off to a hobby and then a side job and then a career. But so many of these same challenges, you know, especially people I think in creative fields and women in general, when they're starting a business, have, you know, the boundary issues. You know, I had that as well for a long time. And what's really interesting is that I could also correlate it not only with my business, but I correlated that with in my life. I wasn't good about setting boundaries in general.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, obviously the better I became at setting boundaries in life, the better I became at setting boundaries at work. And the pricing issue, I had always seen such a correlation between worth, self-worth, self-love, self-appreciation. You know, I had some colleagues that were charging extraordinary amounts of money and tons of clients. And I was always like, well, what is she doing, or what can I see from her that's different from me? And, you know, a big thing was boundaries, having firm boundaries, but also self-love and appreciation and self-worth, of understanding like my time is precious. The time away from my children is precious. The time that I dedicate to work means less time to do stuff for myself. You know, and it was lack of business skills too. You know, I went to school for medicine and then I started running a business. Well, you don't really learn how to like do a cost of doing business worksheet, right? That was a great starting point for me to really like learn what it meant to actually set pricing. But was so interesting was that I could correlate so much of some of the things that held us back as women entrepreneurs as to these limiting beliefs or ideas that we had as girls, which is one of the reasons I launched Raising a Powerful Girl, was having navigated these challenges as a woman starting a creative business, and why in the beginning I was failing at it. And it was until I learned to have good boundaries, work on communication, pick up the business skills. You know, math wasn't my big thing. Well, you got to learn to do a little bit of math and crunch a little bit of numbers. Self-love, self-appreciation, you know, that my art your art becomes something that's so intimate. I think it's a piece of you when you create it, that I had to set the boundary between my art and like me as a person, so that I didn't feel like I was hurt if somebody didn't want to purchase it, or if, you get people that make comments every once in a while, or like, oh, you're too expensive, or this or that. But they were all skills that I realized I didn't have when, growing up as a young girl, which was really interesting. And it's interesting that you brought those up.
Yeah, I want to agree with you that, and say it was the same for me with the whole boundaries with clients. It was also because I didn't have firm boundaries in my life with my friends and my other relationships. So all that work I did with both clients and my personal life went hand in hand of setting those kind of boundaries. And the challenge for me was when I was doing the portraits wasn't so much setting the price, but then allowing clients to walk on me and being frustrated by that.
Right.
So learning how to put that back in, being in control of what it is you're offering. And, that's it. And, even though it was in writing and my contract kept getting longer and longer, but being in control of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's a little bit of leadership skill too, right? Leading the process. And I think when you get into do anything like that, I see it myself just raising my girls as well. Am I following along with them, or am I leading them through the process? And it was the same thing as being an entrepreneur in business. Well, when I wasn't having good boundaries and I felt like I was getting stepped over, that's because I was allowing the client to lead the process instead of me saying, no, this is how this process goes.
It works.
Let me bring you along on my process of how this works. You hired me as the expert. This is how it works. And I relate it to my children, is this, this is how the process works in our home. Not, we don't get to eat ice cream at, 6 o'clock in the morning because you feel it, and, it's that almost like lack of leadership skill. And it's because even, as girls, we're not put into that position. We are constantly being led, especially when we're in school. We're following the teacher. We follow the teacher along. We're told what to do. We're not allowed to lead. And that leadership skill.
I think it's more than just a gender issue too, though. I mean, I know this is a podcast about empowering girls, but people who are creative, I think that more often than not, they are introverts.
Yeah.
An introvert is, some people say, oh, I like people. I'm not an introvert. Doesn't mean you don't like people,
right.
But you gain your energy from being alone. And so you're not naturally necessarily skilled so much with that kind of emotional IQ to navigate all those types of relationships, because you don't always put yourself out there as much. So I think a lot of it has to do with overcoming or knowing how to leverage your strengths as an introvert inside your own business is really critical.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's that piece as well. It's not just a gender bias that women aren't natural leaders, but sometimes I think it's that introverts aren't naturally assertive in making what they need part of their business. I think that's a huge piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%, because I am an introvert that can be very extroverted when I need to, but I had to learn that skill set in order to move forward in my work. So it's interesting. So now you're raising your children, you're working as an artist, and now you have a daughter that's going to school for a creative field. How do you think your journey helped to kind of shape or empower or allow her to explore her creativity? And do you think you did things differently than the way that you were raised? That's led
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So, my mother didn't want me to be an artist, right? So I studied engineering, and nothing was wasted. I don't regret anything. Yeah. But the truth is, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be a musician, what's the better major for that? Is
Art
it better
or music?
Is it better to study comparative literature at Middlebury? If because that isn't, it's better if you want to be an artist, study an art field. If you want to be a musician, study a music field. So I was on 100% her decision to pursue that. And I vehemently defended that decision against many parents who were like, well, do you need a backup? I was like, no, she doesn't need a backup. In fact, for music, I don't know how many musicians you have on this podcast, but just so you know, for people who go into music education, they have a 99% placement rate after graduation. And most people don't know that. They assume that, music programs are being cut, blah, blah, blah. And that may be true, but the barriers of entry are so high to reach that level where you can teach music that they are still in demand. So if somebody wants to pursue something that is creative, the best thing is not to go for the backup major. The best thing is to go for that degree that they really want, because you can always do that other stuff. You can always have the same career that comparative literature major had at Middlebury College if you had the music major or the art major. You don't have to go to a liberal arts college. You can major in music. You can major in art. You can major in dance. You can major in acting. If you have a graduate degree in college. And when I went to college, there was no internet. I didn't know that I'd have an online business. So I couldn't have majored in online classes when I was an undergraduate. So it didn't matter what my major is when I graduated. And the best way to equip your child with what they want to do is to let them study what it is that they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And they're going to, if they love it, they're going to excel at it. And I think what's really interesting is that there's so many career options out there that I've become aware of just in like the last year through the podcast. We've had a music therapist on who went to school and he has his master's in music, and he does music therapy. So he works in the hospitals, he works with children on the spectrum disorder, but he was always very musical, and it's an amazing career, and job placement is high. We've had an art therapist on where they work with children with disabilities, or she can also do art with children that have been abused, or in court cases where the child can actually draw something, and she does like forensic art, and she can actually pull things out of it. All of these really cool, interesting fields based in art.
Yes. And then on my own podcast, I've interviewed artists who are licensed. So if you walk into your Anthropologie Kate Spade and you see a cute flowered bag, well, an artist had to make the flowers that go on that purse. And if you go into some store and there's a cute mug or whatever, there's so many products with images and cards, all that art, that is from artists who are getting paid. And many of them are in the six-figure range. So it actually, when they have the skills to do that, they can thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What are some other, you with your podcast, you talk to artists all the time. What are some interesting things that you've seen people do with their art outside of what we might think traditionally what an artist would do?
Right. I think that a lot of people have a limited idea of what an artist is, and they just think of the traditional artist who paints for a gallery and sells their art. So there are people like me who do online art classes, which also that is a career that I have and it's a six-figure career. So, you have the art teacher, you have the artist, you have people who are licensed to put their art on products. Usually they will work with an agent who works with them, helps them find licensing partners in manufacturing. So I know several artists who do that. There are artists who are illustrators. If you pick up the New Yorker, they almost always have an illustration on the cover. So there's that. There is now the online, not online, but the electronic games. All those games that's with the animation, those are all designed by artists. They don't just come out of nowhere. So there's animation. Disney is a huge employer for artists in animation. There also more people are making money off of reproductions whether it's licensing or prints, than they are on original art. You can find definitely more examples of that, but people who sell their art in the hotel industry, they work with art directors for putting art in corporations, hotels. Like I said, most of the time, those are prints rather than originals, but it can be originals. So those are different examples of business models. And I did a whole episode, I want to say that's episode number 4 on the Inspiration Place podcast, where I did dig it with somebody else into the different business models for being an artist. So there's multiple modes. Logo design is yet another one. So there's lots of opportunities for people who like to draw to make a living doing something that's very creative.
Yeah, I love that. It's so awesome. I just interviewed a woman, I think our last week's podcast, her daughter learned stop animation when she was 5, and she's obsessed with stop animation. And she sent me some of her videos, and she's 9 now, and she can fly a drone, and she's got these stop animation videos. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, imagine where this could take her. She could be the next animator for Pixar, or, work for Disney, or she could take that information and maybe she gets into like 3D printing. And I interviewed a little girl for our girls platform who has these, she had her hands amputated when she was 15 months old from meningitis, but she has robotic arms that were created by this amazing company in the UK that uses 3D printing to then make robotic arms for people at a better cost. But hugely creative people have taken, all these other creative processes and technology that are coming and making such a huge impact. And it was like, to me, I get so excited to see people taking creativity and doing so much with it from so many different angles. It's really, really amazing.
And it's not just the cartoon animation. If you think about like the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts movies, all those creatures in there, that is done through computer. I think it's called computer animation, but that is an extremely creative field that there is. It's lucrative for the people who develop the skills that they need to do those positions.
Absolutely. So do you think that you created an environment in your home of creativity with your children, and that's helped to foster, the love of creativity? Or is there some advice that you could give parents on how to foster and keep, creativity as a part of their home? And because it's obviously very important for children to have that, to be able to explore continuously.
Absolutely. So I have 2 children. I have a son and a daughter, and I knew it was important for them to have their own venue of expression, which wasn't actually fine art, because they saw that as what mommy does, and they couldn't compete really with what I do. Not that I'm saying I'm in competition with my children, but I wanted them to each have their own thing. And my daughter, I had encouraged her during the elementary strings program to pick up the cello. I mean, the 2 of us laugh at it now that I decided her career. It wasn't exactly that way. I just liked the cello, and she went with it. My son, again, I wanted him to have his own thing as well. He did the clarinet, and he pursued that throughout high school. He was in a jazz band. Neither one of my kids were very sporty. They both loved being on the quote unquote the music team, and they really flourished from having a means of creatively expressing themselves. And my son, who's a freshman in college now, he does tell me how he misses the music, and now he's trying to seek out something extracurricular with that, since he's not a music major like my daughter is. But I do think it's very important for kids to have a way to express themselves non-verbally, whether that's through music or art.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was so great chatting. There's anything you wanted to leave us with, any advice or tips to help, if your child is got that spark for creativity, to help not squash it, or to help nurture that in them as a career, what would that be?
Yeah, I would just tell all parents not to worry about where things are going to lead. Don't worry about all these careers we just talked about. Just, it can comfort yourself to know they're out there, but pursuing them, letting them pursue something creatively as a child, as an adolescent, and in college doesn't mean that that's what they're necessarily going to be. But I truly believe that they will be a healthier adult when they have a means of self-expression. So that would be my message to parents, is not to worry about what the vocation is going to be just because they want to pursue something at the highest level. In fact, I would say there's more doctors coming out of Juilliard. I don't know if you know about this.
No.
Yeah, I have to get maybe that's something you might want to look up for the show notes, what the statistic is, but there's a lot because they developed the discipline in music to pursue something like that. So don't worry about where things are going to lead. You never know what's going to happen, what the next internet's going to be, what kind of jobs are going to be out there in 10 or 20 years.
Absolutely. I love that. Such great advice. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
For more information on Miriam, you can find her at theinspirationplace.net. That's www.theinspirationplace.net. To find out more how to empower the girl in your life, please visit www.empoweredgirlmovement.com and join our Facebook group called Moms Raising Powerful Girls. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you love what you heard today, please share your thoughts with me by leaving a comment and 5-star review on iTunes so we can keep the good stuff coming your way. To soak in even more goodness, ideas, insights, and empowerment, make sure to connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Raising a Powerful Girl. And help us in our mission to empower girls around the world by sharing this episode with another amazing parent looking to empower their daughter. In the meantime, make sure to join our weekly newsletter at raisingapowerfulgirl.com for more insights to help you on your journey. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.